Kell Brook versus Frankie Gavin. The more I think about this fight, the more I think it's likely to happen. Why? Because of sensible business sense. I noticed on Twitter today there's lots of rumours circulating that this fight is getting close to being made. Now I think about it, I'm pretty sure it will be made. Let me tell you why. Frankie Gavin has already had a loss the first time he stepped up in competition, which was against Leonard Bundu. Now, in my opinion, the only reason Eddie Hearn signed Frankie Gavin was to, build up a sort of British title fight between Gavin and Brook. Now, I think Eddie Hearn wanted a year to do that, have Gavin facing so-so opponents like Van Heerden, and try and build Gavin's profile on Sky to a point where he could make that into a massive British pay-per-view title fight. Now, obviously, that hasn't happened. Frankie Gavin's only fought, I think, maybe was it an 8-rounder or something against an unheard of opponent. It's very, very early days in Frankie Gavin's matchroom career. So it hasn't happened. However, Frankie Gavin's value to Hearn is only in that Kell Brook fight. Gavin isn't a superstar in his own right. He's not going to be getting big fights in the welterweight division like Mayweather, Pacquiao, Khan, Broner. That's not going to happen. He doesn't have huge fan base that's going to be making Eddie Hearn millions and millions of pounds. For me, Gavin's value is purely in that Kell Brook fight, and the only way Eddie Hearn is going to be able to exploit that value is if the two guys fight. Now, the reason I think that Brook must fight Gavin for business reasons is twofold. Firstly, because if Frankie Gavin fights Tim Bradley, he's going to lose, and then the whole purpose of Eddie Hearn picking Frankie Gavin goes out the window, and hiring Frankie Gavin to his team goes out the window, because if Frankie Gavin loses to Leonard Bundu and to Tim Bradley, then both times he stepped up in competition he's lost, and it really is hard to make him out as a credible opponent for Kell Brook at that stage. It's hard to make the fight pay-per-view, which is clearly what Eddie Hearn's business model is, and it's hard for anyone to really suggest that that's even a competitive fight. Not that it may be anyway. So I think the first reason they have to fight is because Frankie Gavin was signed for the purpose of making this fight, in my opinion. And that goes out the window if he loses to Tim Bradley. And I'd give Tim Bradley something like a 95% chance of winning that fight, in my opinion. Frankie Gavin isn't as good as Bradley in the ring and doesn't have the power to make himself, a live underdog in terms of knocking Bradley out. Now, the second thing is protecting Kell Brook. Still on a global level, Kell Brook isn't the biggest name compared to, say, an Amir Khan. The way Kell Brook is going to have success in getting the major fights is by holding on to that IBF belt. For example, the winner of Mayweather-Pacquiao is going to have 3 belts. It may be possible that they're going to want to unify, and as a result, Kell Brook could be an easy option. Or, for example, Mayweather could beat Pacquiao. Pacquiao could decide he wants a comeback fight and he wants a belt to gain legitimacy. So Pacquiao might then fight Kell Brook. My point is, for a fighter like Kell Brook, who maybe doesn't have the global recognition of an Amir Khan or a one-man-one Marquez, that belt is extremely important in securing future fights. So he can't really afford to lose the belt at this stage. Now, with that in mind, he's got to consider what happens if Frankie Gavin faces Bradley. The last thing Kell Brook wants is to have a mandatory opponent in Tim Bradley. Because Tim Bradley, in my opinion, possibly represents the worst risk-reward in the welterweight division. He's coming off a draw, a debatable performance. He isn't I know he's had pay-per-view success, but he isn't like a sort of global phenomenon. He's not the first name on casual fans' list, but he's one of the trickiest, most difficult boxers out there. And I think Tim Bradley can give Kell Brook hell, and possibly I'd even favour Bradley to beat Kell Brook at this stage. I rate Bradley really highly. I keep harping on about it, but anyone who hasn't seen it must watch Bradley Marquez. The way Bradley outboxes Marquez there is really, really impressive to my eye. So I think Kell Brook wants to avoid fighting Bradley. The risk-reward doesn't add up to him. And I think with that in mind, they've got to do whatever they can to stop Tim Bradley becoming sort of mandatory slot. And if they rush into making a Frankie Gavin Tim Bradley fight, in my opinion, they're only going to be expediting that process. So I think there's 2 reasons effectively why this fight must happen sooner rather than later, Brook Gavin. Firstly, is to get some value out of Frankie Gavin, because I think that value will dissipate instantly if he fights Tim Bradley. And secondly, it's to try and prevent Tim Bradley from being in a mandatory position for Brook's title, and Brook having to fight Bradley in a very, very high risk fight that represents lower reward than the other big names in the division. That's my thoughts anyway. I'm keen to discuss. I'm keen to hear people's thoughts. This fight sounds like it's getting closer. Brook Gavin, for me, it makes business sense. Not the most thrilling matchup. I do hope Eddie Hearn doesn't try and get pay-per-view pushed through for this for May the 30th, but I don't think that's impossible if you consider that Joshua's fighting Kevin Johnson and there's a few other big names on the bill. I'm not sure if Selby Gradovitz is that day as well. Let me know your thoughts. Is it going to be pay-per-view? Is this fight going to happen? Do you agree with me that it makes business sense? Thanks for watching.